You're listening to Crossroads Church with Pastors Marcus and Natalie Avalos. The following message was recorded live at our Sunday morning services. For more information, go to www.crossroadsc.com or visit us in one of our Sunday morning services at 8:30, 10, and 11:30. And now prepare your hearts as we receive this morning's message.
Hey, good morning. So when I was in college, my grandpa called me one day, I think it was like a Tuesday, and he said, "Hey, Joel, my sister, the last sibling I have, she just passed away, and would you be willing to take me to the funeral in Louisiana?" And I was living in San Antonio going to UTSA, and I said, "Yeah, I can probably make that work." So I scrambled, got time off of work, and we got up early, I think it was early Friday morning, and we drove out to this funeral. It was about an 8-hour drive to central Louisiana. And when we got there, my grandpa, he was a little, so he couldn't drive, by the way. He had to give up driving a few years earlier because he was getting older, and it was just a little dangerous for everybody on the road for him to be there. So we drove out there, and the whole time we're talking, he's reflecting back on his sister and stuff. Well, when we get to the funeral home, it's about 30 minutes before the service starts, and he's like, "Hey, park over there." And I'm like, "That's not a parking spot." He says, "No, but I want you to park right there." I'm like, I called him Papa. "Papa, if I park there, I'm going to block the entrance to the funeral home." He's like, "Yeah, that's what I want." And I was like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, just park right there, and I want to make sure that I see everybody as they're coming in, because I want him to come over here to the car because he had a hard time walking." I said, "Well, we can't just park right here. Joel, please do what I say." So I'm like, well, his sister just passed away. So I park at this weird angle right in front of where everybody's going to come into the funeral home. Where everybody's coming, everybody comes in, they'll call him Uncle Ellis. He's Cajun, right? So they call him Uncle Ellis. So they're like, "Uncle Ellis, what's up?" And so they're all talking. And anyways, so we're sitting out there the whole time, like, why are we sitting in the car? Why don't we just go inside? It's cooler inside. And well, come time for the funeral to start, I'm like, "Okay, Papa, let's go inside." He's like, "Oh, I ain't going inside." I was like, "Well, we drove all this way to go to the funeral." He's like, "No, I'm not going in there." I was like, "What?" I said, "No, I'm not going to go in there." I said, "Well, then why did we drive here?" He said, "Well, I wanted to be here for the funeral." I was like, "Right, but the funeral's happening inside." So we're having this weird exchange going back and forth. Finally, I said, "What is the deal?" He said, this is what he said. He said, "I don't want to go in there because if I see my sister dead, it's too real for me." And he said, we didn't actually talk that much anyway, so if I don't see her body there, I never have to really maybe admit that anything's changed. I thought, wow, that is very brutal honesty right there. And I started thinking in my life about how often something's changed, like major, dramatic change, and it takes me a while to catch up to the reality of it. This happened when we had our daughter. My wife and I, before we had our daughter, we just traveled all the time. And we were gone like 6 months of the year traveling. She's a flight attendant, and I lead these expeditions. Then our daughter came, and all of a sudden, it ain't so easy to go anywhere anymore. Anywhere you go, it feels like you're like taking a whole 40 pounds of, no more than, 400 pounds of luggage, right? It's like it used to be so easy. I could just take a backpack, and I'd go for a week. And now it's like I got like this and the car. And all of a sudden, it was about a year and a half in, it hit me one day, and I was like, life is never going to be the same. We got a kid now, right? I'm kind of slow, so it took me a year and a half, right? I think Emily figured it out while she's carrying around this, right? So we're talking right now about change. And I want to talk to you today about what happens when we get to those moments in life where you look around and life has changed and you didn't necessarily want the change, but it's a new kind of cold reality you face. And here's what I know. Everybody in this room, we face multiple experiences of this throughout our life. Maybe you've recently woken up and you've realized, I'm not married anymore. The person I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with is gone. They left. They flipped out. And now I'm a single mother. Or maybe you've just had the reality that you thought you were going to marry this person. You were envisioning your life together with them. And all of a sudden, that's over. That relationship is over. And all these plans you had for the future, they're ended. And it's just this cold reality that life has changed. And there's nothing you can do about it. It is what it is, right? Some of you, maybe you've just gotten a diagnosis. I hope this isn't the case. But some of you, I know this happens. You've gotten a diagnosis. You've got a life-threatening illness. Maybe you've got something you're going to be carrying around with you the rest of your life, and they're just saying it's just going to get worse and worse, and it's going to get hard. Some of you, you're looking in the mirror and you're saying, that thing I wanted is never going to happen because I'm just too old. It's too late. And we have these moments where we face these stark realities that life has changed. It's never going to be the same. And this is kind of the question we ask ourselves. What do I do now? What am I supposed to do now? Like, life has changed. I don't necessarily like it, but giving up isn't an option. If you're in here this morning and you think giving up, you're thinking about giving up, let me just tell you, don't give up. I'm going to explain why as the series goes on. But giving up isn't an option. So it's like, what do? Everything's changed. Maybe the job, you lost the job and you're thinking, oh, they're going to hire me back. They're going to hire me back. And it's been 4 or 5, 6 months and it's not happening. You're like, that job's not coming back, right? When we face these cold realities in life and we're asking ourselves, what do I do now? I want to talk to you about that this morning because it's really important how we navigate these transitions and these changes. And there's a story in the Bible that I absolutely love that we're going to look at today of a guy who faced a very cold reality. And we're going to look at how he responded and then how Jesus kind of redirected how he responded to that. So it's the story of Peter, right? The first time we meet Peter, Peter's out fishing. This is what he does for a living. He's out fishing. Jesus comes and says, hey guys, I need your boat. The crowd's a little tight here. I need your boat. I need you to take me out so I can preach from your boat. So he gets in the boat. Jesus preaches a sermon, and then he tells Peter, hey, look, why don't you push your boats back out and go catch some fish? And Peter's like, man, I've been out all night. I'm a pro fisherman. There are no fish out. It's not happening today. And Jesus says, look, just throw your net on the other side, and something's going to happen. And all of a sudden, all these fish come into this net, and Peter turns and he's like, who are you? And Jesus says, here's what I want from you, Peter. He says this, while walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw the two brothers, Simon and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea. They were fishermen. He simply said this, hey, follow me. I'll make you a fisher of men. He gives him a call. And all of a sudden, Peter's life has changed. And Peter drops his nets and he starts following Jesus. And for the next 3 years, he's hanging out with Jesus. He's watching miracles. He's seeing the power of God on earth walked out with Jesus. And then things get intense. And all of a sudden, Peter ends up denying Jesus. When Jesus' worst possible moment, he spent 3 years watching this guy prove he was God. And at the worst possible moment, Peter says, no, I don't even know him, right? So he denies him. We know the story. He denies Jesus 3 times. When people are like, hey, you were with Jesus. No, I don't know the man. He denies Jesus, and then Jesus is killed. And Peter has to face a very new reality. The reality is that the guy he was following, like everything's changed. I can imagine Peter started to see himself. Maybe he's like, hey, Jesus is going to hang out. People were confused about what Jesus was going to do. He's like, they were probably starting to think at some point he's going to lead a revolution. Maybe I want to be the lead commander in his army or something. Getting these visions of grandeur and all this stuff. But what happens? Jesus dies. Peter has to face, and then Jesus rises, right? But here's the thing. Peter's still kind of confused about what's going on because it's like Jesus died and he came back, but he knows like it's not going to be the same anymore. What we've had for these last 3 years, it's not going to be the same anymore. So this is where we pick up the story of Peter, right? The first time we see him, Jesus says, follow me. His life has changed, and then all of a sudden Jesus dies. Jesus comes back to life, but Peter realizes everything has changed. So we want to look, here's what he did. This is how he responded. This is pretty interesting to me. So Simon Peter said to them, they're sitting around, they're like, what do we do now? What do we do now? Jesus is gone, he died, he rose, he's showing up in random places, but I don't know what's going on. What do we do now? So Peter says, I'm going fishing. Now, for some of us, you'd be like, oh, that's a great idea to relax, right? No, but that was that was Peter's job before he met Jesus, right? So he basically said, I'm just going to go back to what I know how to do. So they said to him, hey, let's go. We'll go with you. So they went out and they got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Sound familiar? Now, this is really fascinating because this comes from John 21, and when I was reading through it this week preparing for the message, John 21 is a really weird chapter because in John 20, John wraps up the book almost. He's like, there's a bunch of other stuff Jesus did. I'm not going to tell you about it because it would take a whole book to fill it, blah, blah. It's almost like he's wrapping up the book, and then there's this seemingly random chapter 21. Read it yourself, and you're like, why he just threw this in at the end. It's like his thing he just threw in afterwards at the end. So that's what's going on. So then, just as the day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples didn't know that it was Jesus. And Jesus said to them, "Hey, children, got any fish?" And they said, "No." He said to them, "Sounds familiar. Cast the net on the other side of the boat. You'll find some." So they cast it. And now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. All of a sudden, something's resonating in their brain going, "Oh, this is familiar. Who's the guy on the shore?" The disciple who Jesus loved is interesting. In John never actually calls himself John. He always refers to himself as the disciple Jesus loved, right? It's just kind of like a little subtle, me, the one Jesus loved, right? The disciple John therefore said to Peter, "It's the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, this is so weird. I looked up all these, trying to figure out what the deeper meaning of this is, but I couldn't find anything. He put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea. So he's already stripped down, but he decides to put on his clothes to jump in the water. Strange thing. I don't know why that detail was in there. There's probably some really deep theological significance. I don't know what it is. So the other disciples came in the boat, dragging a net full of fish, for they were not far from land, but about 100 yards off. So Jesus is hanging out waiting for them. He made them breakfast. And when they had finished breakfast, Jesus grabbed Simon Peter and says, "Hey, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than all these?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Now, you got to figure, Peter's probably still feeling a little guilty about denying Jesus at the worst possible moment, right? I mean, it's not a good feeling, right? And he said to him, "Feed my lambs." So then he said to him a second time, Jesus says to Peter again, "Hey, Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And he said, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And he said to him, "Tend my sheep." Then he said to him the third time, "Simon, Peter, son of John, do you love me?" At this point, it says Peter was grieved. He was hurt. He said to the third time, "Why are you saying this to me the third time?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you dressed yourself and walked where you wanted. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hand, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." This he said to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God. And after saying this, he said to him the very first thing he said to Peter when he called him, "Follow me." Now, this is fascinating, okay? You kind of it's easy to get lost in this. You're like, what is going on here? What? First of all, do you notice that Jesus asked him 3 times, "Do you love me?" And how many times did Peter deny Jesus? He was reprogramming him. He was saying, "Hey, you thought you ended as a failure, but I don't want you to remember it that way. I want you to remember yourself by what your real identity is as someone who loves me." And then this is fascinating. He says, "Peter," this is weird. Why would he say this? And they says, "This is said to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God." Basically, Jesus is saying to him here, "Peter, you're still going to get where I intend for you to go. Everything's changed. It's not going to look the same. Life isn't going to look probably like what you had started to envision when I was around. Everything's changed, and you're facing the cold reality that I'm about to leave, and you're going to be all alone, and it's not going to be the same. But here's the deal. You're still going to get where I want to take you. You still have a destiny. You still have a purpose. And even though everything's changed, in many ways nothing has changed, because here's what I still want you to do. Follow me." So yes, everything's changed, Peter, but nothing has changed about the call I have on your life. And I think that's the message for us this morning. When we face those times where we look in the mirror and say, "Man, this is not what I thought was going to happen. This is not how I thought it would turn out. I don't like where things are. I thought I'd have that job back. I thought I'd be married. I didn't think I was going to be divorced. I didn't think I was going to have a lifelong illness." Jesus is saying to you, "Hey, I know stuff has changed, and maybe it's uncomfortable and you don't like it, but really, nothing has changed in the call I've put on your life." So I want to give you 3 things I got from this passage about what we need to ask ourselves when you say, "So what do I do next?" Here's the 3 things I think that we all need to ask ourselves when we come to these times in life, these transitions. and we're overwhelmed, and we don't like where things are. But here's the three things I want you to ask. First is this: who am I? Who am I? Now, this is not an easy question to answer, and it's going to look different for every one of us. But let me tell you first off, I can't tell you who you are, but I can tell you this morning who you're not. Okay? So let's go over a few things that we get mistaken in who we are, and it kind of can mess with us sometimes when a transition or a change happens and we're lost and we're kind of trying to find our bearings. The first one is this: you are not what you do. You are not men. You are not what you do for work. I have a coaching program, and I have guys all the time that they tell me this: I don't want to retire because if I retire, I'll die. And statistics show that there's a high percentage of people that shortly after they retire, they actually die. And do you know why that is? Because their identity was wrapped up in what they did for work. I talk to a lot of mothers who are in their 40s, and their last kid's about to leave the house, and they've poured their heart and life into those kids. And they're asking themselves, who am I apart from raising my kids? It's that you've thrown your whole life into that, and sometimes we even forget who we are apart from that. In fact, so many times marriages break up after kids leave the house because the entire identity of the marriage has been wrapped around who we are with the kids at the center of the marriage. You are not what you do. This is really important. Second thing you're not is this: you are not what you have. Say, man, so many times we're working and trying to accumulate stuff so we can try and prove we're someone of value or something, and you're not what you have. What you have really doesn't matter. What matters is who you are on the inside. Third thing is this: you are not what or who you know. This is a big false self that we create for ourselves. I know this stuff. I have this knowledge base. I talk to a lot of guys that are getting out of the military, and they've got this very specific knowledge base that's really helpful in the military, right? But then they get out into the non-military world, the civilian world, and they were this captain or high-ranking person, and all of a sudden the next day, once they're separated from the military, they're like, I am nobody. Like, I feel like nobody out here. Nobody recognizes the knowledge base I have. Something that was really important in the military, maybe something in the civilian world doesn't translate that well. And so people are like, well, what do you do? And you're like, I was a big deal. Do you know who I am? I was a big deal. But then all of a sudden when you're separated from the military, you're nothing, right? And so many times we get wrapped up in our identity in these things that as soon as we lose them, we start to question who we are. And the fourth thing is this one: you are not your past mistakes. I talk to a lot of guys that their reality is this. They say, man, I made some dumb mistakes early in my life. I spent some time in prison, and now I'm walking around for the rest of my life with a criminal record. And it shapes how people view me, and you start to take it on as your identity because people try and push that identity on you. A lot of times we're remembered by our worst mistake, aren't we? You say, man, I've changed. And people are like, yeah, I don't believe it. And we spend our life trying to prove that you're not your worst mistake, right? Well, let me tell you this morning, you are not your past mistakes. This answer to who I am, this is a hard, complex question, so much so that I actually spent 3 years writing a whole book about it. That's what the book Fully You that I wrote is about. So if you haven't gotten a copy of that yet, there's some in the back, but if you just say, I can't afford it, this is so important that if you just say, I can't afford $10 for the book, just go back there and say, Joel said this one's on him, all right? Whoever's back there, just give it to you. Take the book. If you promise to read it, you can have it. But that's what I wrote that whole book about, is finding your identity, because your identity's got to be found in your relationship to Christ. That's why Jesus asked Peter so many times, hey, do you love me? I do. Do you really love me? I do. He said, Peter, I don't want you to be recognized by your greatest mistake. I want you to be recognized by the fact that you love me and I've called you to follow me. First question, who am I? Second question, what am I gifted and called to do? This is really important. You don't find your identity in what you're gifted to do, but what you are gifted to do is going to play a big part in your role of giving God glory on earth. And there's something He has placed in you. It's a skill. It's something that comes so natural to you, you don't even realize you have it. I talk about my wife all the time that she is so amazing at just making people feel unconditionally accepted. When our daughter was born, we had a flight attendant friend of hers come over who brought us all these gifts, spent all this money on our daughter, and just talk like like Emily and her were like best friends since they were kids. And when she left, I said, Emily, how long have you known her? And she's like, well, we took one flight together. I said, what? This lady talked like she's your long-lost, like, sister. Emily has this tremendous gift for making people feel unconditionally accepted, welcomed. And the thing is, a lot of times she doesn't even realize she has it because you're so close to it. And you've got something like that in your life. You're so close to it, you think everybody has it, but they don't. It's a special gifting, a special calling God has placed on your life. I meet a lot of mothers that once their kids leave, they're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm like, man, your kids are tremendous. Like, you definitely have a calling to work with kids. So maybe you need to go and maybe start becoming a teacher, or maybe start serving in the church's children's ministry and say, I never thought of myself as that way. I just thought of myself as a mother. But the calling doesn't go away just because things have changed around you. Right? So that's the third thing you've got to ask. Once you figure out what am I gifted and called to do, and again, this isn't a journey. I can't tell you in a 28-minute talk on Sunday morning who you are, other than you are loved by God, and that's a good identity to start with, right? You are somebody who He unconditionally loves, and you're forgiven by Him. And secondly, I can't tell you in 28 minutes what you're gifted and called to do. That's something you have to work out, and you have to explore, and you have to try stuff, and you have to experiment, and try serving over here. And if it doesn't work out, and we'll tell you. And if you just know it's not working out, hey, that's all right. So it's just in the right fit. But you're going to find something if you experiment long enough. We're going to talk next week in our second part of this new roadmaps about how to explore these new places that you can experience. So today I don't want to leave you hanging, but next week we're going to talk about how you build out new roadmaps in your life for change when everything is changing around you. Okay, it's going to be really good. It's really good. Third thing is this, and this is the most important. How can I use these realities of who I am and what I'm gifted and called to do to point people to Jesus? Because that is what we're called to do, to let our light shine before men that they may see our good works and glorify our Father in heaven. And when you can keep this at the center of your life, no matter what's happening around you, no matter what changes are happening, no matter the season of life, you're looking ahead, you're saying the kids are about to leave in 2 or 3 years, and I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. You're seeing retirements ahead, and you're like, I've got to get out of this job, but I don't know what I'm going to do next. Like, what would I do next? Or you're looking around and you're saying, man, I just found out I have this debilitating disease that's going to be taking my life little by little over the next few years. And apart from God healing me, this is a reality I'm living with. You're saying, man, I thought I was going to be married the rest of my life. Now I'm a single mom. Listen, all of that, everything around you may have changed. But really, the most important thing has not changed. And it's this fact, that God has called you to a purpose. In fact, it says, I love this verse in Romans. It says this, God's gift and His call, they're irrevocable. They can't be taken back. Paul's talking about Israel, and he says, look, man, even though Israel screwed up, the call was still on them, and that message is still true for all of us today. Everything around you may have changed, and you may be looking at some cold realities of where you are in life, maybe some disappointments, some frustrations, some discouragement. Man, everything changed. I never thought I'd get to this place. I never thought I'd be here. Maybe you're feeling a little anger. Let me tell you this. Everything may have changed, but the most important thing has not changed, and that's this. God has called you to a purpose. He's given you gifts, abilities, talents He wants you to use for His glory. And whatever it is that's happening around you, it doesn't change the call that God has placed on your life. It may look different. Sure, it's going to look different. Our life looks different now that we have a daughter. But the call hasn't changed. And the call on your life has not changed. The thing God has put in you, the gifts He's put in you, the talents He's put in you, the special abilities He's put in you to point people to Jesus has not changed. And no matter what happens, whether you're married, divorced, have a lifelong illness, have a criminal record, it doesn't change what God has put in you. That has stayed, and it will stay. And here's what I'm calling you to do today. Step into that. And don't be afraid of the change around you, because yes, everything has changed, but Peter, nothing's really changed. I still just want you to follow me no matter what it looks like all around you. And that's what I believe God's saying to every one of you today. Can you imagine what it would be like if tomorrow you get some more bad news, or you find out something's about to change here and there, and you say, you know what? Maybe you find out you're going to get laid off. I'm not wishing this on anyone, right? But whatever comes in the future, challenges are going to come. What if you could just go into it with this mindset? You know what? It doesn't matter what comes, because my call is the same. And the great thing is, just like Jesus said to Peter, I'm going to complete my work in your life, he's saying that to you today. He is going to complete what he started in you. He who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. He has not forgotten you. He has not abandoned you. He has not left you. You didn't slip by without him taking notice. He is watching and he is working behind the scenes in your life. And he is going to take you to where he intends you to go. So you lean into that call on your life. And don't be shaken by what's going on around you, all the changes, all the realities, the cold realities you're facing. Recognize that God still has a purpose for you. And he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. You guys receive that? Let me pray for you. Father, we thank you so much for this reality that you've placed a call in us. It's a call to follow you. And if we can stay focused on that, no matter what happens around us, no matter how hard life may get, we may say, man, yes, everything has changed, but nothing has really changed because I'm still called to follow Christ. And I pray that would be a reality in all of our hearts today. Lord, whatever we're facing, I pray for people that are just facing really hard truths today in their life, cold realities that they're facing. They've been maybe trying to ignore them. God, I pray that you would just help them to embrace the truth of what's going on around them, but more importantly, embrace the truth. Everything has changed, but really nothing has changed because the call you've placed on their life remains the same. And it may look different, but I pray that you'd help us to walk flexibility in that new move that you're doing in our lives. In your name, amen. Amen. Hey, let's all stand and we will close with a song.
Thank you for listening to Crossroads Church. We trust this message enriched your life in some way. For more information, visit us on the web at www.crossroadsc.com. Or if you're in the area, come by and visit us on a Sunday morning at 8:30, 10, or 11:30 a.m. Crossroads Church, we're bringing a real God to real people.